Hello there, Beth from Como Park Zoo and Conservatory, coming to you thanks to the Legacy Amendment from our lovely Skipper Garden here outside of the primate building of Como Zoo, so that we can share a little bit about pollinators with you today, since our lovely gardens are attracting lots of wonderful native pollinators, busy bees doing their jobs. Last week we got to learn about how pollination works, but now we need to learn about why plants use animals for those relationships and how extreme and specialized those relationships have become. So pollination with an animal is working by taking advantage of an animal's behaviors and giving them often a reward in return. For many pollinators, that reward is delicious, sweet nectar full of sugar and energy. So those busy bees are looking for a sweet, sugary drink. And as they fly, they would seek out a flower and land on it. And on that flower, not just is there delicious nectar, but there's also all of those anthers covered, not in cheese dust, but in pollen. And as they're touching the flower and moving around, they pick up a big dose of pollen, and they flit along to the next flower, where they leave behind, as they touch and look for tasty nectar, lots of pollen for the next plant. This pollinates the next generation and helps spread pollen from one flower to another. Now, plants use pollinators because they're not able to get up and move on their own. A daisy's not going to get up and walk to another daisy to be able to spread its pollen, so it needs something to do the job for it. And while some plants rely on things like wind to help move the pollen, it's not as advantageous as it seems. In some cases, that wind might be blowing in the wrong direction, and all the plants you need to pollinate are out of reach, even if they might be really close. In some cases, you're also producing lots and lots of pollen for just a tiny amount to successfully reach another plant through the wind. This can be really energetically expensive and wasteful. So instead, take advantage of an animal and its behaviors so that you're able to successfully move your pollen from one plant to another. Some plants take this another step further and specialize in utilizing just one group of pollinators. By doing this, there are some advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantages might include, well, you're relying on one very special animal. In some cases, pollinators become so specific that there might be just one species taking care of that entire plant species. And if something happens to either one, they're both in trouble, which could be a pretty big issue for them. But there are some advantages. When you're letting generalist pollinators visit your flower, they're also visiting every other species of flower that allows that too. And since that's happening, your pollen might not end up on the same species of flower, so your pollination attempt might get wasted, which wouldn't be really helpful. So sometimes having specialized shapes or colors or special rewards would encourage your pollinators to come and visit you, and only you. Those relationships become increasingly more tight over time and can produce some beautiful blooms as a result. For example, we're going to be talking about 3 groups of pollinators that you might find in your own backyard today. And we have some flower examples, as well as some interesting household kitchen tools that you might find and you might be able to put yourself to the test with a little bit later. When it comes to things like bees or other small flying insects, they don't have really long specialized mouth parts, so they need to be able to access their pollen, their nectar and the pollen fairly easily. So having a nice landing pad or a place to climb into or land is a really great way for a flower to encourage bees to land. Having lots of little places to get nectar from, lots of little flowers so they can dab at it with their tiny mouth parts is super helpful and lets them take a break, since flying is hard for a big heavy bee, and they get a chance to enjoy all sorts of tasty nectar without as much effort, successfully picking up lots of pollen before they move on. An example you might find in your garden or here in our gardens at Como Park Zoo and Conservatory, you can see these beautiful bells set up so that bees will climb inside, getting all the way in there with no choice but to pick up a big load of pollen on their way. The bright white flowers are extra attractive to bees too. Whites and yellows and other bright colors, as well as ultraviolet patterns. Probably these beautiful purple spots look really cool to bee vision, would be an extra attractant. They also have a light floral smell, but The fact is, bees are mostly using their eyes to find their food, not their sniffers, so they want to be able to seek out those delicious flowers wherever they might be. Another group of pollinators you often see in your backyard are butterflies and moths in a group called the lepidopterans. These insects, with their beautiful big wings, they also have excellent senses of vision, so having bright colored flowers is a great way to attract your butterfly friends. In the case of butterflies, they're also attracted to reds and purples and pinks as well. So they would flit along. Butterflies love a place to land so they can sip their nectar and enjoy it, and collect lots of pollen on their little legs. In the case of moths, they're a little different than butterflies, aren't they? Moths are active during the nighttime or nocturnal. So if you're a flower attracting moths, there's no point in being open or producing anything during the heat of the day. Your moths aren't going to come visit you and you're wasting your energy. So instead, moth-based flowers often only open at nighttime, and they produce really strong, fragrant smells to attract those moths, as well as producing their nectar at nighttime to attract them and reward them for their visit. Moths, being active at nighttime, also tend to be attracted to those smells even more strongly than to their eyes. Here you can see a beautiful example of a flower that butterflies could skip along and take a little snack of. Now, while moths have an excellent sense of smell, most birds don't. So if you're trying to attract an avian pollinator, like a hummingbird, you would instead use bright colors and not have any fragrances to your flower. There's no point. Bright reds and pinks and oranges attract hummingbirds. Also on these flowers, you can notice a long, deep floral tube. And this means that they're not inviting other pollinators to come and visit as much. When they have one specialist pollinator, they're able to exclude others. And only the hummingbirds with long bills were able to successfully get into those tubes to get tasty nectar. And then they were the ones that survived to make more hummingbirds. Over time, flowers that wanted hummingbirds to pollinate them had longer tubes. Hummingbirds that pollinated them got longer bills. Our small, short mouth parts on something like a fly or a bee wouldn't be able to get down in there to get a tasty snack. Hummingbirds with their long, straw-like bill can get all the way down there for a sweet treat, and in the process, collect pollen on their foreheads. Over time, this can develop to some pretty amazing extremes. In the case of the sword-billed hummingbird, they have a bill so long that it's actually longer than the rest of their entire body combined. And unlike all other birds that can use their bill to preen and clean their feathers, their bill is so long, they can't. They have to use their little feet instead. That's a pretty extreme adaptation to specialize in just one group of flowers, which is pretty awesome. Now, if you're wanting to learn more about pollinators in your backyard and beyond, there are lots of great resources that you can seek out to learn about them and explore. You could check out our website for your very own Pass the Pollen activity, where you could decorate and cut out your own flowers and use your own little bee and your little bee legs to spread pollen. You could use cheese puffs of different kinds, or you could even use something like sidewalk chalk to help spread that pollen around and see how it moves from flower to flower. If you've been making a journal or would like to start making a journal to observe pollinators, you can take this week to try and observe the pollinators in your backyard. See where they're going, what they're doing, what flowers do they like to visit. Do you notice pollen sticking to their little legs or to their foreheads or to the rest of their bodies? Take notes and see what you can see. Just remember to respect the personal space of your nature neighbors, since many of them just want to protect themselves and stay safe. You could also swing by your local library through curbside service, or check out some great books online, such as Tiny Bird, Exploring the Amazing Journey of Hummingbirds, our own little avian pollinator. You could explore and follow around those bees, encouraging yourself to be a citizen scientist like Bea in Bea's Bees, written by Catherine Pryor and illustrated by Ellie Peterson. perhaps butterflies are on your mind and you'd like to explore the long journey of monarchs, you could explore that through Seniorita Mariposa, written by Ben Gundersheimer, illustrated by Marcos Almada Rivero. And bees aren't just out in the country. You can find bees and bee farmers, called apiarists, in your own backyard, no matter where you live. And Kaya learns about bees in her own city backyard and learns about how they can be great friends and neighbors. If you're an adult, there's lots of great pollinator resources for you as well, including The Natural History of Pollination, written by Michael Pryor, Peter Yao, and Andrew Lack, where you can learn a little bit more about pollinators and their extreme specializations over time. Pollinators are amazing for every age, and there's so much that we can learn. I encourage you to get out and explore. Try to use different kitchen implements to illustrate the different specializations of our pollinator friends, or get outside and make observations. You can also try to inspire your green thumb yourself by tuning in with us next week, where you can learn a little bit about the special tips to inspire pollinators to live in your backyard from our horticulture team, who brings lush greens and beautiful blooms to our pollinator exhibit. Thank you so much for listening, and until next week, be well.